A simple woman was mocked for her thrift store parka, her duct-taped rifle case, and for being an older woman in a place built for defense heirs and elite soldiers. They called her Lost Cowgirl cosplay. A trainer joked he'd walk out on his head if she scored more than 5. Then she lay down, said nothing, and from 1,000 meters, fired 10 perfect bullseyes. The range went silent, and then they uncovered her name on the building. The clipboard trembled slightly as the staffer tried not to laugh. He didn't ask for ID, just clipped a badge marked "Visitor" to her coat and waved her through. A shooter leaning against a range bench tapped his friend and tilted his head toward her rifle case. The tape around the hinges had begun to peel. Someone filmed it. Another whistled. The caption under the live feed read, "Antique inbound." No one spoke to her directly. A round aluminum token skidded across the gravel and landed near her boot. On it in marker, someone had written, "Janitor shift." The coin stayed there. She stepped past it without pause. Up on the balcony, 2 instructors watched with arms crossed. One sipped coffee. The other said, just loud enough to carry, "Might be the first time someone brings a mop to the 1,000-meter line." Laughter rose like a low swell, not loud, just constant. She moved steadily through it. The announcer's voice cracked over the loudspeaker. Entry 9, now approaching guest shooter. No team affiliation. Open qualifier. The registration tablet had no name logged. Just mock entry 9 in bold red letters. A woman in tactical sleeves raised her phone and panned it toward the path. $5 says she doesn't clear the first shot. One of the younger shooters shouted toward the tower, "Hey, someone log her under historical reenactments." No one offered her a lane. She walked the path alone. Her boots were quiet over the packed gravel, but the air around her was sharp with amusement. A man near the score tower leaned forward and snapped a photo as she passed. His caption said, "Before the flop." She said nothing. A clipboard was held out toward her with an empty signature line. She signed it, 4 quick strokes. No questions asked. The staffer looked at the name, then looked at her. He didn't react, just stepped aside. She reached the firing platform and stopped. The mat was steel cold, weathered from years of recoil. The wind pressed across the far ridge and whispered down through the targeting lanes. She lowered her case, not rushed, not hesitant. The locks cracked open one at a time, first the left, then the right. She opened the lid and paused. The range was still laughing behind her. She lifted the rifle and began to load. She passed through the main lounge of Pinewood Training Field unnoticed. The walls gleamed with oil-finished walnut, broken only by trophy cases and mounted rifles under glass. Names were engraved in brass beneath each photo: retired champions, founding donors, decorated officers. Crystal tumblers rested on polished trays beside bottles of bourbon positioned like museum pieces. No one looked up as she entered. A junior marksman near the leather couches glanced at her over his shoulder. He nudged the man beside him and tilted his head. Did she get lost on the way to maintenance? The other smirked, but didn't turn. Bet. She's someone's aunt. Let her look around. She didn't stop. Her steps were steady over the polished concrete. Near the front stairwell, 3 instructors stood comparing trigger pull data on a shared tablet. One of them muttered, "We're letting just anyone walk through now." The hallway narrowed before opening into the archive gallery. It was lit with museum-style spotlights and lined with records, black and white photos of early range founders, their names etched beneath in uniform font. A display screen flashed performance statistics in a silent loop, nearby wind readings, shot groupings, trajectories. One of the plaques had been covered by a promotional banner for an energy drink sponsor. The banner was bolted into the wall across a single brass plate at waist height. The others shined. That one didn't. She paused there for one breath, then moved on. Upstairs, the long corridor that led to the viewing decks was filled with side displays: framed bullseyes, nameplates, shattered clay targets preserved in resin. The staff here wore embroidered quarter zips and discreet earpieces. Most held clipboards or coffee. None asked who she was. No one needed to. To them, she was already defined. By the coat, the taped case, the silence. A pair of shooters posed for a selfie at the end of the row. Behind them, her figure blurred in the corner of the frame. One added a caption before posting, "Range ghost caught on camera." Laughter bounced from a nearby stairwell. From the deck above, a woman in a black vest leaned on the railing and whispered to a man beside her, "She's still wandering. Just don't let her get near the tower." "Should we tell the marshal? She'll probably wander out when it gets cold." The woman passed beneath them without looking up. Near the main conference door, a large digital screen cycled through donor names in gold text. The sequence moved slowly, each name highlighted, then replaced. Her name wasn't there. Not anymore. Beneath the screen, an older target print had been framed in black. A perfect group, 12 rounds in a pattern no wider than a quarter. No signature, just a line of date and distance below, 1000 mm standard wind verified. 2 shooters looked at it, then past her. One said, "No one's touched that record since 2015. Probably a fluke." She walked on. An older staff member holding a stack of forms brushed past her without apology. A pen slipped from his clipboard and clattered to the floor. He didn't notice. She picked it up, handed it back. He took it, muttered a thanks, and turned away before seeing her face. She moved past the private lockers, glass-doored backlit, each with a name etched into the panel. They gleamed under the LED strips. Custom gear, perfect alignment, quiet pride. She reached the final door at the end of the corridor. A sign read, "Authorized use only Founders Range." No one stopped her. No one knew they should. She stepped through the door, closing quietly behind her. In her coat pocket, a worn utility knife rested against her palm. She didn't reach for it. Not yet. The competition lanes opened just after noon. Sunlight flashed off steel rails and glass panels as elite shooters lined up across the platforms, setting down branded mats and unfolding high-end gear. With the ease of repetition, Pinewood's main viewing deck was already crowded. Defense heirs, venture-backed tacticians, old contractors turned spectators, each settled behind tinted partitions, drinks in hand. Custom rifles glinted like jewelry under the overhead lights. Laughter moved through the upper levels, muted but constant. She walked to the far left station alone. Her mat was plain unmarked, her coat folded neatly beside her boots. Around her, shooters adjusted precision scopes and toggled turret locks, while assistants read out wind data in hushed tones. Everything gleamed: bolts, bipods, nameplates, tablets. By comparison, her rifle case looked out of place. The tape across the edges had dulled and frayed the handle wrapped in faded cloth. Someone tossed a token toward her station. It landed flat on the mat just beside her elbow. Janitor shift scrawled in black marker. No one claimed it, no one apologized. She didn't touch it. A shooter across from her dropped into position, exaggerated the motion, then rolled to her side and groaned for the crowd's benefit. She's gonna eat that recoil. Laughter followed, mostly from the younger competitors. One of them held up a phone screen glowing with a private live stream. In the chat, a line of text scrolled fast. She brought a musket to a laser fight. She opened her case without reacting. The latches gave with a soft crack. Inside the rifle was clean, its wooden stock scratched but cared for. The scope was older, its finish dulled around the rim, but the glass was clear. She laid it out piece by piece, checking each round with steady fingers before aligning them inside a dented tray. Above her lane, the digital scoreboard blinked to life. Mock entry, number 9, no team badge, no name, just the number and an empty profile icon beneath it. On the deck behind her, a woman with a tactical vest leaned on the rail and whispered, "Who let Grandma sign up for open range?" Someone laughed. Someone else hit record. She stayed in place. Her motions were practiced, deliberate. She adjusted her sling, rotated the scope gently in its mount, and tapped once at the bolt. The sound barely registered. With her back flat to the mat, she reached into the side pocket of the case and pulled out a small, worn notebook. She flipped to a marked page. Faded ballistics notations ran in careful columns down the paper, sloped angles, hold points, custom wind calibrations drawn by hand. She scanned it briefly, nodded once, then closed the cover and placed it beside her gear. Down the row, a staff member barked out final checks. Assistants rechecked sensors. One pair joked about needing a broom to sweep up her pride. No one offered help. No marshal approached. She didn't need them. She lowered herself into the prone position, Her left arm braced beneath the stock, her right palm open over the rear grip. Her cheek met the rifle like muscle memory. Her breath slowed, not labored, just quiet. One breath, then another, then stillness. Someone behind her muttered, "She doesn't even have a team patch." Another added bet, "She's here to ghostwrite the manual." The laughter died more slowly this time. The camera above her, focused in the live stream chat, blinked with gifs and reactions, but her face showed nothing. No acknowledgement, no break. She slid the bolt open, fed the first round in with care. The range display pulsed red then green. The timer started. She exhaled once. And waited. The wind shifted as the lineup rotated. From the tower, a smug voice cut through the loudspeaker. Next on deck, mock entry. Number 9, open qualifier 1,000-meter attempt. This should be interesting. The crowd stirred, some leaned in, a few started clapping, slow, exaggerated, theatrical. From the scoring tent, a range tech looked up and smirked. She's really going for it. A man on the benches adjusted his phone angle to keep her in frame. His stream was already titled, "Motel Sniper Goes Long." In the chat, viewers placed bets 10 meters 25, maybe 40 before her first shot missed. A betting pool formed in private groups. None of it quiet. She stepped forward without a word. No speech, no request, no delay. Her boots crunched softly over the gravel, the sound faint beneath the laughter and layered voices. One instructor whispered, "Let her take the long shot." Good lesson in wind and ego. Another added, "Make sure the medics are watching. She might throw out her back going prone." Still she walked. The scoreboard above the long-range lane lit up, mock entry number 9. The red digits pulsed in time with the countdown clock, 10 minutes until rotation. The timer started ticking down in the corner of the screen. She approached the line calmly, each step measured. No one offered support. No one asked her if she was ready. From the overhead cameras, her taped rifle case looked out of place next to carbon fiber rigs and precision-grade mounts. One of the interns monitoring the feed zoomed in on the tape and typed a caption for the lower third legacy or lunacy, "You decide." She didn't look up. A staffer on the sideline raised a small silver whistle and gave a single sharp blast. The sound cut through the last of the chatter. Then came the silence. She set her coat beside the mat, laid the case on the gravel, unlatched it, and removed her rifle in one slow, practiced movement. The crowd didn't blink. They wanted the moment. They wanted to say they saw it live. She positioned her mat, pressed her knees down, then shifted into prone like she'd done it 1,000 times in dust, rain, or snow. Not in front of cameras, not for applause, just to shoot. The breeze at her back moved across the high grass, tugging at the edge of the cloth beneath her elbow. The range lights hummed overhead, muted but constant. Far ahead, the 1,000-meter target looked like a postage stamp buried in the earth. She settled in. Cheek to stock, breath to wind, hand to trigger guard. Behind her, someone muttered, "She hasn't fired a single shot yet, and I'm already embarrassed." Another whispered, "I'd pay to see this flop live in slow motion." She adjusted her rear hand slightly, then paused. Breath in, breath out. The gravel beneath her boots didn't shift, the scope didn't twitch. Nothing moved. Not even her name. Only the countdown on the board. 30 seconds now, then 20. She didn't check the time. She knew it. The digital screen blinked to green. The range fell quiet. All that remained was a faint whistle of air, and a single unmoving figure pressed flat to the mat, locked in place. She didn't flinch. She didn't speak. She waited, ready, still steady. The signal flashed green. Timer zeroed, mock entry number 9 lit up in the far left lane. A low mechanical click echoed as the laser tracking system came online. A thin gust cut through the pine above the berms, curling across the long stretch of gravel and steel. Somewhere high on the viewing deck, the last murmur of conversation faded into stillness. She didn't move. Her cheek remained nestled into the worn stock, her breath barely lifting off the surface of the mat. Inhale, exhale, not rushed, not held, the kind of rhythm earned through repetition, not rehearsal. Cold air touched her knuckles, but she didn't flinch. Her fingers stayed loose, aligned, waiting. The first shot came like an afterthought. One breath ended, and the trigger broke. The sound was small compared to the space it filled. No echo, just a crisp report that vanished into the hills beyond the range. The red dot lit up on the target screen. Then, center clean dead heart of the ring. The laughter hadn't returned yet, but no one clapped. A few glances traded between benches. Someone leaned forward. Someone else reached for their drink and set it back down, untouched. She cycled the bolt. Smooth. The second round seated. Her body shifted only enough to reset. The scope barely moved. She made one micro-adjustment to the dial. Nothing showy. Just one click. The breath returned metered and calm as if she were somewhere else entirely. She fired again. Then... Same position, same hole. The screen blinked, then locked a second red dot invisible under the first. In the balcony lounge, a man cleared his throat and said nothing. His phone lay in his hand. Unlocked. Forgotten. A younger shooter at the far bench whispered to his friend and stopped mid-sentence when the third shot landed. Then... There was no delay now between fire and score. The grouping showed no spread. The instructor who had joked about recoil earlier leaned against the support column and watched in silence. His arms folded slowly. She remained flat to the mat. One more round slipped into the chamber with practiced ease. Her elbows didn't shift. Her shoulder held the line. Nothing in her breath betrayed effort. The fourth shot cracked through the cold air. Then... The grouping hadn't widened. Not by a hair. The tech running the scoreboard leaned toward his monitor, blinked, then blinked again. He reset the system camera overlay to confirm. Fifth round loaded. She breathed, let the air settle, made no adjustments. The round fired. Then, the dime-sized cluster on the screen began to pulse red with tracking heat. A spectator near the edge of the viewing deck whispered, "Is that live or a simulation?" Someone else shook their head. No one replied. No one laughed. The staffer holding the printed leaderboard hadn't written anything yet. She stayed in position. Her eyes did not leave the scope. She fired again. Then, the sixth impact fell into the heart of the cluster. By now, the scoreboard operator had stopped toggling between lanes. The feed remained fixed on mock entry number 9. She cycled the bolt again. No extra breath, no hesitation. Seventh shot. Then, the instructor leaned forward, gripping the railing. He hadn't moved in 2 minutes. A younger shooter sat down slowly beside his rig and began repacking his gear without looking up. A woman in a branded jacket pressed record on her phone, but didn't say anything. Eighth shot loaded. Still no pause. She didn't mark her targets. Didn't confirm her score. Didn't celebrate. She simply fired. Then, at the far end of the range, a gust picked up a streamer left by a previous competitor and carried it toward the berm. No one noticed. Ninth shot came without delay. Then, now the sensors took a full second to lock. The cluster was so dense the laser had to re-register the center line. The tech behind the glass raised his hand and shook his head once. A scoreboard printer clicked to life. She didn't look up. Her hand moved to the final round. She lifted it, set it closed the bolt. Breath again. This time deeper, but only just. The crowd didn't breathe. No noise, no phones, no comment, just the low wind pushing faintly at the mat edge. The 10th shot fired. For 1 second there was no result. Then the board blinked. Then 100. The printer spit out the score. 100. No decimals, no deductions, no delay. She opened the bolt, let the cartridge rest beside the others. She pulled her cheek back from the stock and sat up. Only then did she look ahead. The screen above her station zoomed in. The grouping was so tight it looked printed. The dime-sized cluster glowed red against the paper. Confirmed, verified, stamped. She placed the rifle flat on the mat, laid one hand over the receiver, and closed her eyes for one breath. Behind her, no one moved. A spectator lowered his binoculars and sat back slowly. The instructor turned away, hand still over his mouth. Someone said her name. Someone else wrote it down. But she didn't speak. She gathered her tray, folded her mat, and stood. The wind passed over the range again, quiet now, like it knew what had just happened. Like it understood. She walked off the line and left the silence behind her. The scoreboard still glowed, red digits, clean zeros, 10 shots, 10 perfect scores, 100 across the board. No wind correction needed, no spotter, no tech support, just her. No one had moved. The staffer in charge of posting the scores hadn't written her name yet. His pen hovered over the clipboard like he was waiting for instructions or maybe permission. Across the viewing deck, cameras slowly lowered. A few spectators stood with hands still over their mouths, unsure if what they had seen had really happened. The last traces of mockery had vanished. What remained now was something else. Not silence exactly, but the sound of a room breathing in at once and forgetting how to let it go. At the base of the north wall near the walkway where the donor plaques lined the perimeter, a retired general stepped forward. No one had seen him arrive. He didn't speak. He didn't wave. He moved with the quiet ease of someone who belonged in places without needing to prove it. He paused in front of a section that had been covered by a promotional banner, just a standard print ad for a sponsor's tactical gear line bolted casually over the brass. The general studied the bolts for a moment, then reached for the edge of the vinyl and peeled it back. The plaque underneath was polished but unlit. It had been there the whole time. 3 lines, one name. Her name, engraved in brass. No title, no flourish, just the words that mattered. Design lead, founding contributor, Trajectory Systems, and Target Design. A sound rippled through the crowd. It wasn't a gasp, more like an absence, a wave of understanding that struck all at once and moved person to person like a current. On the floor above, a man who had live-streamed her setup earlier lowered his phone. He didn't press, stop, he just let it hang in his hand, forgotten. The woman in tactical gear, who had mimed a collapse before her first shot, now stood at the bench. Her rifle remained untouched, her gloves half pulled on the routine forgotten. Near the tower, the instructor who joked about janitor shifts pressed both palms flat to the desk. He didn't speak. He didn't move. One staffer reached for his camera. He fumbled it. Once, caught it again, then raised it slowly as if unsure whether to record the moment or simply witness it. The screen above the range still showed her final grouping, a red circle no larger than a thumbprint at the exact center of the target. The system had verified it, so had the printer. The evidence was no longer theoretical. It had been archived. She didn't look at the plaque, not yet. She stood at the edge of the mat, her rifle now resting flat against its case. Her hands didn't shake. Her face didn't change. In her right hand, half concealed by the cuff of her coat, was a faded ID badge. The laminate had yellowed. The lettering was worn down to a ghosted print, but the barcode was still visible. So was the photo. Younger then, but unmistakably her. A lanyard marked with the founding year curled once around her palm. The general turned away from the plaque and looked directly at her. He didn't salute. He didn't speak. He simply gave a single nod, measured, respectful, absolute. No one clapped, no one dared. She didn't move to the front, didn't raise her voice, didn't correct anyone or explain. She didn't have to. The brass had already spoken. The numbers had spoken. The system she designed had confirmed the outcome with perfect clarity. The scoreboard blinked once more, then held. Perfect 100. Red digits locked. She walked away from the mat one step at a time, her gear packed in silence, not rushed, not delayed, just steady, clean done. Behind her, conversations began again, but they sounded different. Softer, uneven. The tone had shifted. A few people stood up just to sit down again, unsure whether to speak at all. The laughter that had greeted her arrival was gone, replaced by a weight no one wanted to name. She didn't look back. She passed the donor wall without slowing. A few turned to follow her with their eyes, but no one stepped forward. They had already said everything that mattered, and she had answered without a single word. The mat was cleared, the lane swept, the scoreboard reset. But the air still held the shape of her. No one said her name, not aloud, not right away. Yet when people spoke about what they'd seen, they paused before the word shooter, as if the term was too small now, too casual. The number 9 remained in the system for 2 hours longer than it should have, suspended in red on the digital log, untouched by any following entry. By late afternoon, the viewing deck was quiet. Half the lounge had emptied. Those who stayed watched the sky more than the range. Somewhere above the ridgeline, wind crossed the treetops and moved in long ribbons down the slope, cooling the metal rails that still bore the warmth of her last round. They didn't see her leave. No footage caught her crossing the threshold or walking through the gates. No signature on the exit sheet, just a final frame of her, stepping away from the mat, her back turned to the cameras, her coat folded under her arm, and the rifle case taped shut once more. What remained became story. By morning, the group of young shooters who had mocked her from the benches had gone quiet. One of them had deleted his footage. Another had reposted the clip without captions or sound, only a slow pan across her final target, the image looping once before fading to black. Down by the donor wall, someone had removed the banner permanently. Her name was now lit from above with a discreet spotlight. The brass had been polished overnight. The general's visit wasn't recorded, but the staff confirmed he had returned briefly. Just once. Just to stand in front of the plaque and say nothing at all. She didn't return, but others began to appear. A girl in second-hand boots arrived the following weekend for a beginner's course. She said little, kept her hands in her pockets, and waited patiently for her number to be called. Before stepping onto the range, she walked the length of the donor wall, slowly reading each name with care. When she reached the bottom corner, where the concrete path met the brass, she stopped. There set just below the plaque, the initials had been etched by hand into the concrete border of the 1,000-meter line. No ceremony, no fanfare. Just 3 letters pressed deep and clean into the foundation. A range tech said nothing as the girl leaned down and brushed a thumb across them. She smiled once, then rose, stepped to her lane and began to set up. Her shots were wide, scattered, imperfect, but her stance was steady and her breath matched the wind. Someone on the bench behind her whispered that her grouping reminded them of a name they couldn't say out loud. Back in the office, one instructor, quiet older, retrieved the laminated visitor badge from the bottom of the waste bin. He dusted it off with the edge of his sleeve, then slipped it into a sealed display case used for retired patches and range artifacts. No label. Just the plastic and the silence. That winter, Pinewood Training Field's code of conduct was amended. A line was added: performance is not determined by pedigree. Underneath it, a single sentence noted the policy was inspired by Entry 9 100-point score recorded and verified. Months later, her name reappeared in an internal systems update. It wasn't announced, it wasn't even required, but in the fine print of the software credits beneath the scoring interface, there it was. Ballistics Module Read Trajectory Engine developed and donated. Those who noticed didn't comment. They just kept shooting. They kept learning. And when they reached the 1,000-meter line and dropped to the mat, some of them paused before the first round. Some glanced toward the wall. Some looked down at the initials cut into the concrete. No one said a word, but every breath that followed knew who had been there first. She never asked for recognition. She never raised her voice, and yet with every quiet breath and every perfect shot, she proved that true strength needs no introduction. They mocked her for how she looked, for where she came from, for daring to stand where only the powerful were expected. But she stood anyway. She did not break. And when the truth finally surfaced, it was undeniable. This story is about more than skill. It is about knowing your worth, even when the world forgets your name. It is about the dignity of silence, the resilience of presence, and the kind of legacy that does not seek attention, but commands it. If her story moved, you take a moment to reflect. Share your thoughts below or pass it on to someone who's ever been underestimated. And follow for more stories where quiet voices carry the loudest truths. A simple woman was mocked for standing too close to the ring, for holding a mop instead of gloves for her gray janitor shirt and shoes that squeaked when she walked. They called her the cleaning lady. The lost maintenance intern even joked that she was there to disinfect the losers. One coach asked if she wanted to box the trash can. A trainee offered to teach her how to sweep the corners, since that was all she'd ever touch in the gym. And then she picked up the mop, cleaned the ring, and in one round broke the local champion's guard like it was made of paper. The gym went quiet. And then the head coach walked in and called her partner. Cliffside Athletic was 2 gyms under one roof. In the back, it was leather and blood-scratched mats, frayed ropes, bruised fighters moving in rhythm with tape around their hands and ice packs strapped to ribs. That was the real gym. Up front, it was all gloss and show boutique locker rooms, branded shakes, LED-lit mirrors taller than most of the people standing in front of them. The front desk was manned by two trainers with identical jawlines and shirts tight across the chest. Everything was a performance. Memberships weren't cheap, and neither were the shoes. Everyone knew where you belonged just by looking. She came in early with the cleaning cart, rolled it past the vending fridge without speaking, and started the circuit. The wheels squeaked every few steps. Her badge bounced against her leg, clipped low to a belt loop. First name only. Staff. She wore a faded gray tee tucked into navy work pants and an old blue sweatshirt knotted around her waist. Her shoes were flat-soled, cracked at the sides, soles gummy with wear. Nobody looked twice. Not until she stepped too close to the ring. It wasn't even a full step, just a shift. A trainer had spilled pre-workout all over the bench, and she moved in with a towel, reaching to clean the edge of the platform. That was all it took. "Yo, janitor's getting brave today," someone called out. It was Eli Grant, one of the gym's weekend warriors, who thought his 6 amateur wins made him Floyd Mayweather. He was shirtless, gloves half-laced, already grinning at his own joke. "Careful, sweetheart. Step in there and the mop's gonna have to fight for you." A couple of the guys on the treadmills laughed. A woman stretching near the water cooler pulled out her phone, tilted it slightly toward the ring. Another voice added, "At least the place will be clean when she's knocked out." Eli raised a glove and pointed it at her, performing now. "You want a round 1 round? I promise not to bleed on your shoes." She didn't answer, just wrung out the towel and wiped the last of the chalk dust from the mat's edge. Maybe she thinks she's part of the program, someone muttered near the heavy bags. Like, mop your way to muscle. Cliffside's new janitor circuit. First you wipe the sweat, then you earn the bruises, another voice joined in. More laughter. Phones angled in. A few people started filming without hiding it. The junior coach on shift, a guy named Brandon, who was more biceps than brain, walked over and leaned on the ropes. "Hey, relax," he called to Eli. "Let her finish disinfecting your ego." A few laughs from the crowd. "Then you can get back to pretending you're a real contender." Eli didn't flinch. "I'm serious. Give her gloves. 1 round. It's Friday. Let's entertain the troops." "You're wild," Brandon chuckled, but he didn't say no. The woman cleaning didn't respond. She just packed her towel into the cart's bucket, rinsed it once, and lifted the mop. "Guess that's a yes," someone said, still laughing. "She gonna mop the ring or fight in it?" another voice called out. "Both." And, from behind the desk, the other trainer looked up, smirked, and said loud enough for the mirrors to catch it, "If she thinks she's got hands, maybe let her clean while sparring. Kill 2 birds." Brandon waved a hand. "Come on, someone get her gloves. Let's see what the mop girl's got." And just like that, it wasn't a joke anymore. It was a challenge, and everyone was watching. She unlocked the side door at 6:23 like she always did. The hall lights blinked once overhead as she flipped the breakers near the supply closet. The cleaning cart rolled out with a low groan, one wheel thudding softly every 3rd rotation. She adjusted the mop handle and wiped her palms on the hem of her sweatshirt. The air inside the gym was still cool and faintly sour, day-old sweat liniment and lemon-scented floor cleaner from her own routine the night before. She moved through it all without pause, a rhythm stitched into her muscles. By 6:40, the first bin of towels had been swapped, the mirrors sprayed, the windows unlocked for circulation. The playlist hadn't started yet, so her steps echoed down the polished floor. Her ID badge brushed her hip with each stride, the plastic click a steady hollow note. The gym was two-faced at this hour. The back, the ring, the worn benches, the bags with cracked vinyl felt like it belonged to the sport. The front, where branded merchandise glinted under boutique lighting and selfie tripods leaned near dumbbells, was still asleep. Even the front desk was quiet. Just Kyle sipping an energy drink, scrolling on his phone, not looking up as she passed with the cart. She didn't expect him to. She cleaned the edges of the ring with tight figure 8s. Always clockwise. She didn't need a reason, it just felt right. The floor mats were scuffed, streaked with chalk, and flecked with sweat that hadn't dried right. She sprayed and wiped, then stood and surveyed her work. The mop leaned beside the bench. A water bottle, cracked and cloudy, sat in the cart's corner. She took a long sip and reset her stance. At 7:15, the regulars trickled in. The playlist kicked on low, some synth-heavy track built more for pacing than punch. First came the fitness crowd leggings, sharp as glass men with taped wrists but no bruises. Then the younger boxers, earnest, half awake, dragging gear bags across the tile. She slipped past them all, lifting sweat buckets and sorting hand wraps unnoticed. Two trainers arrived together. Brandon, the junior coach with too much volume in his voice, and Tony, the older one who kept his words close. They didn't see her either. Or maybe they did, but only as part of the space, like a wall or a rack of gloves. She moved when they moved, wiped where they walked, stayed out of their light. At 7:40, she crossed behind the ring to replace the towel stack. It was a small detail, just one that bugged her. The bin under the ropes always sagged after the first session. She ducked under the ropes, careful to stay low, and dragged the clean stack over. Her hand brushed the frame of the ring as she steadied herself. And someone saw her. A slap of sneakers against the mat, a grunt. Eli, stretching his legs near the edge, looked down with a half smirk. Didn't know janitorial worked ringside now, he said, tossing his towel into the corner. She didn't look up, just moved back under the ropes. Behind her, a few chuckles rippled. A woman filling her shaker bottle by the water fountain looked over her shoulder. Kyle at the desk raised his eyebrows just a flicker and went back to scrolling. She said nothing, just rolled the cart one step back, one to the side, and parked it behind the pillar. The clock above the ring hung crooked, still untouched. 8:12. She had 3 more minutes before the floor would be too crowded to mop. Her hand tightened on the handle, and she adjusted the grip without thinking. The mop tilted in its bucket gray fibers, curling like steam against the plastic edge. That was when Brandon called out loud enough for the treadmills to catch it. If she's done sanitizing the ring, maybe we let her run around. It wasn't mean. Not exactly. It was the kind of joke the gym was full of aimed low meant to land easy. She stood still. A couple of the fighters laughed. One nudged his friend. Phones came out. Screens lit the edge of the mirrors. She moved to the towel bin again, sorted the colors, checked the lid. By then the joke had spread. The back corner repeated it. Let her go around. I'd spar her. Might learn something about how to clean a canvas. No one thought she'd answer. And she didn't. But she stayed. Just long enough to be noticed. Just long enough to give them what they didn't yet realize they'd asked for. She was wiping down the edge of the ring when someone called out, "Hey, mop girl, you're up next, right?" Laughter cracked across the gym floor. It wasn't sharp yet, not mean, just playful, thrown around like a medicine ball. But the noise gathered quickly. Sound travels faster in places, built for sweat and echo. Someone else added, "Careful, Eli. She might take your belt and your mop." Eli, Grant gloves slung over his shoulders, stood near the water cooler, already performing. He grinned, looked around for witnesses, then tipped his chin toward her. "I mean, if she wants to go one round, we can clear the ring. Might learn a thing or two about deep cleaning." The comments bounced from wall to wall. A guy near the free weights started recording. 2 fitness girls near the mirror rack turned toward the noise, one raising a phone, the other whispering with a smirk. The energy shifted. Something was starting. Eli stepped onto the mat. "She's already dressed for a funeral," someone called. Might as well make it one. She was still wiping the vinyl. No rush, no reaction. Just smoothed the cloth down the corner pad and stood back up. Brandon, the junior coach, leaned over the ropes and laughed. "You want in, I'll mark it down. We got an open round before lunch." She didn't speak. The front desk guy, Kyle, walked over with a dry marker and tilted the whiteboard hanging next to the lockers. "Name?" he asked, pen hovering. "Or should I just put janitor?" "Put mop," someone said. "It's shorter." The gym cracked up again. Kyle scrawled it on the board. Sparring schedule 12:20, Eli versus mop. She didn't blink. Just turned, walked to her cart, and reached beneath the towel bin. Her gloves were tucked into the side pocket, patched, weather-worn fingers darkened where the leather had rubbed thin. She carried them back with one hand and stepped toward the ring. A man filming from the treadmill said, "This is gonna go viral." Someone cue the Rocky theme. Eli bounced in place, stretching his neck side to side. "I'll go easy," he called out. "Don't want her quitting halfway through round 1. That floor's not gonna mop itself." A few more phones came out. A girl in a branded tank top leaned toward her friend, whispered, "She doesn't actually think this is real, does she?" Her friend laughed, lifting her phone. "It's gonna be quick. Blink, and you miss it." The bell above the ring wasn't used for official bouts, but someone smacked it anyway, just for effect. The sound rang out, clanging against the air like a countdown. Brandon tossed Eli his mouthguard and leaned over the ropes again. "You want gloves, mop?" He snorted. Not that you'll need them long. She stepped into the ring, silent, head down. No fanfare. Her badge still clipped to her waistband, her sleeves rolled once at the wrist. She set the gloves on the floor, knelt beside them, and started wrapping her hands slow and precise. She didn't look up. A group of trainees clustered near the edge of the mat. $10 says she bails before round starts, one said. 15 says she gets knocked out in under 20 seconds, another added. Someone nearby pulled out a protein bar, already settling in. Eli's crew lined the ropes, laughing, razzing him with friendly trash talk. Try not to hit her too hard, champ. Might lose your gym discount. Tell her to aim for your mop instead. The sign posted next to the whiteboard read, "No sparring without coach clearance." No one seemed to care. She finished taping her wrists, pulled on the gloves, and stood slowly. Her eyes flicked once toward Eli. He grinned like he'd already won. She adjusted the strap on her right glove and gave it a single tug. No smile, no response. Then she walked to her corner and waited. The crowd leaned in, and the room buzzed louder. The bell rang once clean and sharp, and Eli stepped forward with a bounce in his knees and a grin fixed on his face. He rolled his shoulders, threw a light jab to the air, and turned a slow circle for the audience forming just beyond the ropes. Someone clapped. Someone else whooped. A phone chimed as it started to record. She didn't move. She stood in her corner, gloves resting at her waist, feet still. Her shoulders stayed loose, her chin tucked without tension. She didn't blink when he stepped closer. "All right," Eli called out, half laughing. "We're dancing or cleaning today." He jabbed again, this time toward her chest, loose, measured, a play gesture. She slipped it, one step to the left, no counter. The crowd chuckled. "Show her the broomstick combo," someone near the dumbbell rack shouted. Eli threw 2 more punches, a jab and a cross. She wasn't there when they landed. Her back foot pivoted. He missed by inches. Brandon leaned over the ropes, smirking. "Got a punch where she's standing, not where she was yesterday." She shifted again, weight gliding left then back. Her eyes never left Eli's chest, not once. More laughter rippled through the gym. Phones hovered higher now. Someone near the front desk muttered, "She's just dodging, not even trying to throw." Another voice answered, "Yeah, 'cause she doesn't know how." Eli closed the gap and tapped his gloves together. "Come on," he said. "You're just making me look good now." He stepped in, dropped low for a hook, and she rolled under it clean. He missed air. Her shoes barely made a sound against the canvas. One of the coaches paused mid-conversation and turned toward the ring. A pause in the laughter. She stepped, left eyes still locked on Eli's ribs, tracking his breath, his weight. A veteran trainer with a clipboard leaned forward from the bench by the bags. His eyes narrowed. "Wait," he said under his breath. Eli tried again, this time faster, throwing a right with more weight. She ducked and spun off the line. His glove hit air. The crowd got quieter, not silent, not yet, but quieter. Someone near the mirrors whispered, "She's not just dodging, she's reading him." The clipboard trainer nodded, barely audible. "That's not beginner stuff. That's drilled." Eli's grin thinned. He stepped in harder now, shoulder forward, a combo building. She waited, her body coiled, not tense, but balanced. He wound up. Her right foot slid an inch. Her weight shifted. Then she struck. One punch, a tight hook, flat and fast, aimed below the ribs. It landed with a sound that didn't echo but sank. A deep thud. Blunt. Final. Eli stopped. His hands dropped. He staggered once and went down, folding hard at the waist and dropping to his knees. His face went pale. He clutched his side, gasping but not speaking. His head hung low. No movement. Phones lowered. The gym fell into stillness. The clipboard trainer was already moving, stepping into the ring with a hand raised. "Back," he said, voice sharp. "Don't touch him yet." Brandon climbed the apron, eyes wide. "Is he breathing okay?" "Yeah," the trainer said, crouching low. "She got him clean." Someone dropped their phone. It hit the mat with a soft plastic clap. The front desk monitor buzzed, still playing music, but no one listened now. Eli rolled slightly, grimacing, his breath shallow and short. The color hadn't returned to his face. His gloves rested limp against the mat. No one laughed. No one spoke. She stepped back once. Her stance relaxed. Her gloves hung by her sides. She didn't look at the crowd. She didn't speak. Just waited until someone moved toward Eli, then turned toward her corner. The clipboard trainer looked up and said quietly, "She's trained." That was real. The bell above the ring hung still. The sound of the mop bucket wheel from across the gym clicked once. The gym stayed silent. The gym hadn't moved. The air was still thick, stretched tight between the ring ropes and the silence that had fallen after Eli hit the mat. The only sound was his breathing, shallow and wet like something curled in on itself. A few of the trainees hovered by the ropes, unsure whether to film or disappear. The front desk monitor continued playing a playlist nobody heard. Phones hung useless at their sides. Nobody was laughing anymore. Then the front door opened. Coach Ben stepped in, keys still in hand, wind tugging the edge of his hoodie. He was the kind of man whose silence carried weight, who didn't bother talking unless it meant something. His boots echoed once on the concrete before he stopped just past the welcome mat. His eyes were on the ring. He saw her before he saw anyone else. For a second, nothing moved. Then his voice broke through the stillness, not loud but heavy. "Is that Lena in the ring?" Everyone turned, not toward him, toward her. She didn't look up. She was standing near Eli, one hand resting on the top rope, gloves now untied. Her breathing was calm, her badge still clipped to her waist. The sweat on her neck had already begun to dry. Ben stepped forward. "Someone want to tell me why you've got Lena Foster in janitor's clothes sparring the gym's amateur clown?" The words didn't register at first, not fully. One of the younger coaches blinked. "Wait," he said, uncertain. "Her name's what?" Ben kept walking. Lena Foster, southpaw, 3-time regional lightweight champ, ran defense drills in this building before half of you were throwing straight punches. A murmur went up along the wall. One of the trainees, still clutching a shaker bottle, whispered, "No way. That can't be her." Ben pointed toward the wall behind the treadmill bay. "Go check the photo over there. Back when the ring was duct taped and the lights didn't work right. She's in the middle row. Blue gloves, cracked knuckles, same eyes." Someone jogged over. There was the photo, half faded. A time-stamped artifact hung behind a cracked piece of plastic. He stared, then stared harder. "Oh my God," he said quietly. "She's in the picture. That's her." Brandon stepped down off the apron, eyes moving between the ring and the whiteboard. His voice was flat. I didn't know." "You didn't ask," Ben said. "You just looked." Another coach crossed to the ring post, crouched, and ran a finger along the inside edge. The corner was marked, faint, rubbed half away with time, but still legible. A name in black marker, clean, cursive script. L. Foster. Brandon swallowed hard. "We didn't know." "You knew enough to mock her," Ben said, voice low. "You knew enough to laugh. That's always easier." Someone near the desk had turned off the playlist. The silence spread wider. Eli was still down. The trainer next to him waved for ice for water. Lena stepped back, letting them do their job. She offered no instruction, just stood there, present. Her gloves rested beside her shoes. Her cart was still parked by the locker hallway untouched. A towel hung limp over the side. A woman who had been recording lowered her phone and slid it into her bag. Her eyes didn't meet anyone else's. One of the guys who'd shouted earlier leaned against the wall, now arms crossed over his chest, face blank. Nobody said her name again. Not yet. Ben walked to the edge of the ring and rested both hands on the middle rope. He didn't smile. Didn't need to. "She used to coach here," he said quietly. "Before the renovation, before the sponsorships and merch deals. Back when you fought to get time on the mat and you knew not to waste it." The silence deepened. "She didn't need to prove anything," Ben added. "And she still doesn't." Lena stepped to the edge of the ring, peeled the tape from her wrists, and tossed it into a nearby bin. Her hands were steady. Her face was unreadable. She didn't address the crowd, didn't nod, didn't speak. She climbed out of the ring and walked past Ben. He didn't stop her, just spoke to the room, his eyes still on the ropes. "She's the reason you're even standing here." She picked up the mop. No one asked her to. No one would have dared. But she walked to the corner where her cart sat, exactly where she'd left it, and wrapped the blue sweatshirt tighter around her waist before leaning the mop handle against her shoulder. The wheels still squeaked every few feet as she rolled the cart past the ring. Every head turned as she moved, but no one spoke. Brandon stepped back to let her pass. He'd been standing in the hallway near the posters, one of which, until 5 minutes ago, had read, "Lightweight challenge who's brave enough," in thick black marker. He pulled it down as she walked by, folding it once before tucking it under his arm. At the front desk, Kyle erased the whiteboard slowly. Eli versus Mop. He didn't try to be casual about it. The letters squeaked under the cloth, stubborn in places. When the ink finally faded, he put the marker away and didn't write anything new. The woman who had live-streamed the match earlier sat on the edge of the bench, scrolling her feed with both thumbs. She tapped the video, deleted it, then scrolled again slower. Near the locker hallway, a trainee who'd made one of the louder jokes stood by the wall of gloves, staring down at his own hands like they didn't belong to him. He didn't move until she passed. Then he stepped aside without a word. She didn't look at any of them. Instead, she wiped down the counter by the vending machines, picked up a half-empty protein shake someone had left behind, and tossed it in the bin. She wheeled her cart through the rear corridor, paused to refill the spray bottle, then returned to the main floor. Nobody laughed. Nobody filmed. Even the playlist was paused. The gym felt smaller than before. She cleaned like she always had, quietly, without stopping. Her gloves still damp from the round hung on a towel hook near the radiator behind the desk. The drip was slow, steady. Someone folded a hoodie nearby but looked away quickly when she glanced in their direction. Tony, one of the older coaches, stood at the far end of the gym with his arms crossed. His expression wasn't quite regret. It was more like recognition, but muted. He nodded once as she passed. She didn't nod back. By the time she'd finished wiping down the dumbbell racks, most of the trainees had left the floor. A few lingered shadowboxing or stretching, but no one spoke above a whisper. The sparring schedule was blank. The gloves were hung with more care than usual. Even the floor mats seemed quieter underfoot. When she reached the back door, she paused, then turned. The ring stood empty, the ropes slack with stillness. The light above cast long shadows across the mat, staining it with the outlines of bodies no longer there. She looked at it just once, then nodded, and left. The next morning, the gym opened on time. The music was lower, the conversations softer. Someone cleaned the bench near the window before using it. A new towel stack sat perfectly even. On the wall above the lockers, taped to the metal siding with clear tape, was a sheet of paper. No color, no title. Just a quote written in block letters. She didn't say a word. We heard her anyway. She didn't return. But the gym never forgot her. You just watched a simple woman underestimated for the way she dressed, the job she held, and the silence she kept. She didn't correct anyone. She didn't need to. In a space built on noise and performance, she let action speak for her. What they thought was weakness was discipline. What they mocked was mastery. And when the truth came, it came without anger, without a single word spoken, just clarity. This story isn't about revenge. It's about presence, about knowing who you are even when no one else does. It's a reminder that strength doesn't always shout. Sometimes it cleans the ring and walks away. If this story stayed with you, take a moment to reflect. Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you believe in stories that honor quiet power, follow for more. There are more voices like hers. You just have to listen.